Caitlin Clark, her NBC, the numbers for that game have finally been released. The executives over there already speaking very highly of her. Is there a potential position in the future? Are they going to be expanding her role? More appearances to come? Sunday night basketball, milestone for NBA on NBC Sports. Lakers-Knicks, 4.5 million viewers on NBC plus Telemundo, 5 million peak audience. Most watched regular season Sunday night NBA game since 2002, excludes Christmas Day. Sunday night NBA games. Now, a Sunday night NBA, is that ABC included, or the ABC games Saturday night games from back in the day?
Millions watched. Supposed to say it this plainly. For years, owners stayed away from numbers in public, hiding behind words like growth, culture, momentum, progress, safe language, comfortable language, language that never rattled anyone. But something shifted, and once it did, pretending stopped working. It didn't begin with a press conference or a TV appearance. It started in a closed room where screens showed raw data instead of highlights, viewership curves, revenue charts, partner projections. That's where the silence crept in, because one owner noticed something that didn't add up. The league had never been louder, yet the money wasn't moving the same way. Social media buzz was massive, but real viewership wasn't keeping pace. So he isolated one variable, Caitlin Clark. The charts jumped, not slowly, not steadily, but violently. At first, he assumed it was a glitch, a one-week spike, something that would flatten with time. It never did. Every appearance, every highlight, every mention of her name created surges no marketing strategy could explain. That's when he asked the question no one wanted to face. What happens if we remove everything except her? The answer was chilling. The model collapsed. What remained was the truth. She wasn't part of the growth, she was the growth. Weeks later came the NBA on NBC moment, framed as a crossover, a friendly segment, a symbolic bridge with no pressure attached. Then the cameras rolled. Caitlin Clark didn't behave like a guest. She didn't play cute or oversell the moment. She sat calmly and dissected the game like she had
baseline expectations.
Spotlight that comes with an NBA national broadcast. So he loved every bit of what Caitlin Clark did and what she brought to the broadcast. Now, this is where he started talking a little bit about having Caitlin Clark back more than that March 29th announcement. So it says NBC Sports is planning to bring Clark back later this season. Cordella confirmed that she is scheduled to appear as an analyst for the Knicks versus Thunder on March 29th. As we know, he also added that he hopes to see more of Clark moving forward, signaling that the door is open for additional appearances. While no expanded role has been formally announced, the comment suggested genuine interest rather than casual praise. So, hey man, I don't know. We might see Caitlin working that booth. That'd be dope though, man. That'd be dope. Of course, with everything going on with the WNBA, we don't even know if we're going to have a season, man. Nonsensical work.
Millions
50x.
Watched, not just WNBA fans, not even basketball diehards. Regular people. Inside NBC Sports, producers noticed something they hadn't seen in years. Viewer retention didn't dip, it climbed. People stayed through the segment. They rewound it. They shared clips outside traditional sports circles. What happened that night wasn't just buzz, it was leverage. By the next morning, updated projections landed on the owner's desk, and that's when the careful language disappeared. According to multiple insiders, he didn't soften it or hedge it. He said it straight. This isn't incremental. It's exponential. Then came the number that changed the room, 50 times. 50 times the projected viewership impact. 50 times the revenue acceleration. 50 times the partner interest compared to everything they thought
changed the season.
Before.
WNBA presented to the players. This is the most recent proposal, and I guess they also brought this to the meeting on Monday. It's so funny, on all of these documents in the corner it says confidential, but they are currently circulating all around Twitter. So I want to go over some of these bullet points with you guys. The first slide, it said WNBA CBA proposal, goals for a win-win CBA. Number one, substantially increase player salaries to reflect recent future business growth. That number one bullet point is something that Adam Silver has said many of times when he is asked about the WNBA WNBA CBA. This is, again, it seems to be why the two sides are on different sides. It seems like the WNBA wants to raise the salary enough to where they don't have to give a percentage of this gross revenue that the players want. And that's where the players are feeling like there's such a disconnect, because it seems like they would prefer the revenue split over the salaries just increasing. But again, you can see here, substantially increased player salaries, which they have, by the way. They've increased the salaries like 6 times the amount of what they used to be. Number 2, promote business health and profitability. And that has been such a big thing in all of these. And a lot of fans have chimed in like, the WNBA has never been profitable. And the WNBA is still young, you guys. It is going into its 30th season. And when we did the comparison of WNBA salaries in their 30th season, if they take this deal, and NBA salaries in their 30th season, and obviously we did the math for inflation, all those things, the WNBA players will actually be making more than NBA players were in their 30th season. So that's why I just don't think this deal is such a bad deal like all of the players seem to think it is. But the WNBA is still focused on good business health and profitability. Number 3, maintain incentives for team and league investments. Now, this next slide
50
shows
times.
We
A number that was never meant to escape that room, but once it did, everything started to crack, because if one player can multiply a league by 50, it forces an uncomfortable truth. The league wasn't the engine. She was. Word traveled fast. Media insiders confirmed it quietly. Advertisers caught on instantly. The tone of conversations shifted overnight. Calls weren't about balance anymore, they were about positioning around her. Then came the jealousy, not loud or reckless, but professional, calculated. Other leagues took notice of the NBC numbers. They saw the audience migrating. They saw attention moving, and attention is currency. That's when the tension really set in, because for years there was one unspoken rule: no single player ever becomes bigger than the system. The system always stays in control. Caitlin Clark shattered that rule without demanding a thing. She didn't threaten, didn't complain, didn't ask for special treatment. She just showed up and performed. And that performance forced the owner's hand. When he finally went public, it wasn't with emotion, it was with math. He showed viewership before her appearances: flat, predictable, contained. Then he showed what came after: spikes so sharp they looked unreal, revenue lines bending upward like someone had grabbed them and pulled. And that's when he said the sentence that changed the entire season.
More iconic figure in basketball in the women's game right now, or the game in general. So we said, let's have a bigger conversation. And it's just so crazy that it feels like every other sport will just come out and say what it is besides the WNBA.
We
the
underestimated
NBA is
her impact. Underestimated is the polite version. The real truth was harsher. They didn't know who was carrying them. The moment that statement hit the internet, everything ignited. Fans argued. Comment sections exploded. Other leagues went silent, and silence usually means one thing: they're watching. What they saw rattled them, because Caitlin Clark didn't just bring people to the WNBA, she pulled them into basketball broadcasts as a whole. NBC saw brand new viewers. Sponsors saw demographics they'd never reached before. The pie didn't just grow, it shifted. And that shift created enemies. You could feel it in the coverage, in the tone, in the sudden push to reframe the story, to remind everyone that growth is collective, not individual. But it was too late. Once numbers go public, you can't shove them back into a box. That's when jealousy turned into panic, because if one player can generate this much value, she doesn't need the league nearly as much as the league needs her, and that realization flips power instantly. The owner didn't walk it back.
The WNBA. The NBA is not scared to acknowledge that there's no more iconic figure in basketball. Not just the women's game, but possibly the game in general than Caitlin Clark. But we would not hear that in the WNBA space. We wouldn't hear that from WNBA media. But the NBA media and the NBA and the league itself is not scared to say it. Like we've seen it when Caitlin does golf events. It just seems like every league but her own is not scared to say the truth. But I do think it's really cool.
The jealousy wasn't personal.
That's the moment where Clark didn't just impact games or ratings, she redefined the entire system. By staying focused on her craft instead of reacting to drama, she exposed how dependent the league had become on her presence. 50x wasn't just a number, it was a signal. A single player shifted attention, revenue, and timelines so dramatically that it forced marketing, scheduling, and media strategies to pivot overnight. She didn't need to speak, negotiate, or lobby. The results spoke for themselves. Clark became the gravity around which the WNBA orbit now revolves. It's rare in sports to see someone silently hold that much power. She changed the rules without ever touching the rulebook. The jealousy wasn't personal, it was structural. Other leagues saw attention drifting, advertisers asking different questions, fans choosing where to spend their time, and time is the one thing you can't manufacture. By the end of the month, the league looked completely different, not because of a rule change or a rebrand, but because one player forced honesty. The owner didn't set out to create controversy, he tried to explain success, and in doing so, he exposed dependence, and dependence changes everything. Caitlin Clark didn't just grow the league, she revealed what it was actually worth. And once a league learns its real value, there's no going back to pretending. This wasn't hype, it was math. This wasn't marketing, it was reality. What shook everyone was how clear it became, how big it was, and how tightly it was tied to one name. That's why the jealousy felt real. That's why the silence was loud. And that's why this moment will be remembered not as a debut, but as a turning point. The day an owner stopped hiding the numbers, the day a league learned who truly drives it, and the day Caitlin Clark changed the business of basketball without asking permission. Forever.